Hello my dear friends and welcome to my channel. Get yourself comfortable and prepare for some interesting stories. One of them is a story about OP's entitled mother who is a terrible grandmother to OP's kid. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you'll enjoy it. My mother is the entitled parent in this story. Her and I have never had a great relationship. She resented me growing up because she was a single mom and never wanted children. She would never spend time or engage with me, and would instead throw money at me to show me she cared. Now I'm all grown up and independent, and just had a baby of my own, and she feels entitled to my son. I have made certain decisions about his upbringing that I'm trying to adhere to. Nothing crazy, just trying to avoid using unnecessary products on him. No baby lotion, no diaper cream unless he gets a rash. Homemade baby food, etc. He's now 4 months and has been working well for us. My mother is very insistent that she gets to see him 2 to 3 times a week. She refers to herself as Glamma, a mix between glam and grandma, and has already procured a few items that say, "Best grandma ever." I have been very hesitant to let her watch him for extended periods of time. I didn't have the best upbringing and honestly believe she would not do what's best for my son. She's always been a very materialistic person and extremely concerned about the image she presents to other people. So I get anxiety thinking of him staying overnight at her place. She keeps asking for him to spend the night, saying she's doing it for me because I need the sleep. But I know it's because she likes the novelty of having a baby around. She first started asking him to spend the night at her place when he was 2 weeks old. I have said no every time. When she was first allowed to babysit him, I had to set ground rules because she kept trying to plan parties whenever he was over. She was trying to show him off to all of her friends and neighbors. The thing is, he's a baby. Large groups of people are not good for babies because their immune systems are weak, and Out City has a number of measles outbreaks. I had to tell her repeatedly that she couldn't be inviting groups of strangers over to pass him around like a doll. She finally agreed and I let him spend a few hours at her place. Still, she kept asking for him to spend the night. She also calls me every day asking me when he is going to visit her again, and offering to take him off my hands for a few days, like he's some kind of inconvenience. My husband had to go to BC for a wedding, so I was alone last week. It was hard. 6 days into it, and I was at the end of my rope. I had barely had any adult interaction, and had only slept 3 hours a day. So I called my mother up and asked her if my son and I can spend the night at her place. I needed to sleep, but didn't want to leave him there without me all night. I figured this would be a good compromise. I would be available if anything went wrong, and she would get off my back about him staying over. She'd been nagging me for weeks about how I should give him plebum, and he would sleep through the night. He was a preemie, and our pediatrician said to wait for solids, but she thought she knew what was best. I had to constantly tell her not to feed him anything but his milk. The night came where I was supposed to go to her place. I get there and there are 15 other people over. Turns out she was having a dinner party. Whether or not she had this arranged before I asked to come over, I don't know. I told my son goes to bed at 8 and he really needed to sleep. She assured me everyone would be gone by 9. That didn't happen. They ended up starting a bonfire, and she's trying to get me to sit by the fire with my son. I tell her I don't want him around all that smoke. He's only 4 months old, so he needs to stay in the house. Besides, it's 8, and he needs to go to bed. She tells me I'm being unreasonable, and should just let him sleep by the fire. I put my foot down and say no. He ends up in his bassinet, and I am waiting for the party to be done so I can sleep. Because my husband has been gone, and I've been dealing with the baby on my own for 6 days, my sleep schedule is completely out of whack. I was hoping to take some sleeping pills to get through a night's rest, since she was going to take care of him through the night. So now, I'm waiting for her to come in and take over for me. 10 rolls around, and she pops in for a drink before heading back out. I ask her again how late the party is going to go since I am desperate to get some sleep. She tells me it should be over soon. again, and that she can't stay in the house because she has guests over and she needs to entertain them. 10:45 comes and she's still at the bonfire. Again, she comes in to grab something and she sees that I'm still up. She tells me I'm being silly and should just go to sleep. She doesn't seem to understand that I have insomnia and need to take sleeping pills, and can't do that until someone else can watch my son. The someone being her, since I asked and she offered. I remind her that I was there to sleep and was waiting on her. She then tells me I'm being ungrateful, since she had this party planned and she couldn't just ask everyone to leave. She said I should just go to sleep and not worry about my son so much. I tell her she can't be taking care of him if she's outside. She wouldn't even hear him if he woke up. She said I should stop stressing, that people will leave soon, and went back to her party. 11:30 comes around and I'm so tired I start crying. I can't sleep, and I wasn't getting the help I asked for. I decided to just take my son and go home. If I was going to do it on my own, I'd rather be around my own things, and in my own bed. I packed him up and sent her a text saying she was too preoccupied to watch my son, and that we were going home. She didn't even see my message until 12:30. How well could she have watched them if she didn't leave her bonfire until then? I ended up getting a string of messages saying it was unfair of me to take him away, that I shouldn't say she didn't care because she spent $700 on him that day, so obviously she cared. I never mentioned anything about caring or not caring. She said I was being ungrateful because if I had stayed, I would have been able to sleep in the morning while she took care of him. I don't trust for 1 minute that she would have done right by him. Her guests were taking up all her time. A week goes by and she asks twice again if he can stay the night at her place. I have no faith in her watching him overnight, but I agreed to let her watch him during the day Saturday. She says she's going to sleep in, but should pick him up around 9 or 10. 11 rolls around and I haven't heard from her. I gave her a call and she says she just got home and that they can't pick him up until later, so I should just drop him off at her place. She was supposed to pick him up because she lives 30 minutes out of town on an acreage that drives right past our house when she goes shopping. I tried telling her it's too inconvenient to drive to her place. I'll just keep him with me. But she wears me down, and eventually I make the drive out to her place. I tell her I'll pick him up in the evening around 9:30 or 10. At 5, I get a text from her saying she's decided to have a bonfire and has invited a bunch of people over. Seriously? The exact same thing as the week before. And I tell her again, I don't want my son sitting out in the hot sun or hanging around the smoke from the fire. I tell her I don't care what she does, but I would pick up my son if she can't watch him. She tells me she is watching him, and that I don't need to take him. I go to get him and I am ticked. I have asked her time and again not to have him around groups of strangers, or to have him around the smoke, and she just won't listen. I didn't even want to send him to her place, but she just kept nagging that she should watch him, so I planned my day around him being with her, and then I had to cancel a D&D game in the middle of the session because she couldn't respect my wishes. When I pick him up, she starts yelling that I'm being ungrateful. She was doing a great job watching him, and how much all her guests are loving him. She tells me that I'm unreasonable and rude. To top it off, she tells me that she's going to tell my Baba about the behavior and that Baba will give me a talking to. What the heck, woman? I should have known better than to try and trust her. She insists on babysitting my dog every weekend. He has pancreatitis and can't eat fatty foods. He gets extremely sick, but she ignores when I say this and continues to feed him bacon, because he likes it. If she can't take care of the dog, how the heck did I think she could take care of a child? And the worst is, she keeps acting like a victim, saying I'm treating her unfairly. Man, I really needed to get this off my chest. I'm just gonna say, what an idiot of a mother you have there. It's best to never leave your son with her, no matter how much he has grown in the future. One wrong move and bam! Your mother is going to turn your son against you. Best to just leave her far away from your son. In my opinion, she has no right to call herself a grandmother. since she hasn't loved you as a mom. You can't be a grandma without being a mom. To start things off, I should explain why I needed my crutches. I was born with a couple different medical conditions, one of which caused my bones to be weak, and another causing me to lose sight in one eye. After lots of treatment and therapy, I was strong enough to walk on my own with crutches, but I still needed assistance with some things. I'm okay now with the exception of my vision. This happened literally the day after I was discharged. I was 8 at the time. My family decided to take me on a week-long trip to a place about 3 hours from our home, because it was very beautiful and not very crowded. So it was the perfect place to relax and get used to being outside. My mom had to leave for an emergency at her job the morning of our trip and took the car. This left me and my dad figuring that the most efficient way to get there would be by bus. We got to the bus terminal really early and hung around for a bit. About an hour before our bus was to board, my dad asked if I needed to go to the restroom. Being a little kid, I said no, but we went anyway. Going to the restroom happened to be one of the tasks I needed help for, so my dad took me in the men's room. Upon seeing my crutches, nobody had any objections and understood what was going on. We were just about to enter the doorway when I was suddenly shoved on my blind side and fell into my dad. My dad helped me stand up and glared at who shoved me. It was a girl, a bit taller than me, standing in front of a lady who was staring me and my dad down. She had a scowl on her face I will never forget. The following conversation went something like this. "E.M. Excuse me, why are you bringing a girl into the men's room? She should be in the women's room." Dad, "Well, she needs help, as she is too weak to do some tasks on her own." "E.M. If she can't do something so simple, then send her to the hospital for them to take care of her." I was shocked and beginning to get angry at the comment. Dad, "Instead of worrying about how I take care of my daughter, why don't you take care of your kid and teach her some basic manners and not to shove people?" "E.M. Your kid could have easily dodged it, or is she just that weak that a tap sends her falling?" Dad, "She's unable to see well and clearly is very weak, so..." "E.M. That's not my fault. She is a blind handicapped burden to society. If you're bringing a girl to the men's room, then my daughter and I will be going there too." Here, the men behind and in front of us step in. Man 1. "He needs to be with his kid to ensure her safety. You have no right to be there or to say anything about him and this kid." Man 2. "You and your kid need to leave these two alone and go to where you belong. If that's the restroom you need, you both are old enough to understand that you don't belong in this one." After leaving in a huff with her kid, my dad and I thought it was over. He thanked the other two men for stepping in, and they said they couldn't stand by and just watch what was going on. Fast forward a couple days, and we're enjoying ourselves on our trip. This location also has a small carousel that I was waiting in line for. The operator saw me at the back and allowed me to cut the pretty short line. Once off the ride, guess who comes jogging up to see me and my dad? "E.M. Hi. I know we kinda got off to a rough start, but I hope it's all good now." My dad chose to ignore her. "E.M. Hey, come on, please, hear me out. I saw your daughter got to cut the line and get on the carousel because of her crutches. Can you let my little girl borrow your crutches so she can cut the line too?" I was shocked and replied, "I need these to stand. I can't give them to you." "E.M. Didn't your parents ever teach you not to be selfish and share? We'll give them back, I promise." She tried to snatch them from under me before my dad stepped in front to block her. "Dad, after what you did to us last time, what gives you the right to even come near us again? Let alone ask for the very thing you ridiculed my daughter for." "E.M. Please, as a fellow parent, you should know how hard it is to give kids a happy life. Please, Linda." Dad, "Yes, I know that better than you, and you surely aren't applying that idea to my kid. Back off now." She tried to say something else, but the ride operator saw what was going on and called security. They escorted her and her child away. That's the last I've seen of them. Your dad's patience is amazing, considering how many people would have slapped her into next week for doing what she did. He could have had assault charges pressed on him, and I think he realized that. Even though the EK pushed OP hard, a slap is probably treated worse in the courtroom. I hope you had a good trip, and well done for getting through your suffering. Well guys, that's it for today. If you end up enjoying this video, consider subscribing, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm going to link it right here. The story is about a terrible OP's mother, and what OP did to her for revenge. Check this out if you haven't. I'll see you in my next video.